Ahmed Fareed here with my good friends from Rotoworld, DJ Short and Drew Silva. Guys, it was in March. We were all sitting in the studio together. Maybe it was before then. We did, I think it was 5 tiers of closers, may have been more than that. Now that we're 3 months later, Drew, has anything changed with the back end of the bullpen for some of these fantasy pitchers?
Yeah, I don't know that draft day rankings need to change. Like, all right, teams have already become more willing to use a number of different pitchers in save situations and to bring in your closer in the seventh or eighth inning if the situation calls for it. And in this condensed schedule, 60 games in 66 days, I think they'll all be forced into doing that. You might see some quicker changes at closer. That's something to watch for because the urgency is turned up to 11. You can't stick with a guy who's struggling for a week and hope that he figures it out because a week is like an eighth or ninth of the entire season. That's why you read the Rotoworld news page and subscribe to our season pass to track all of these closer situations. I think setup men should have more value than they would in a normal year because of that, because teams aren't going to stick with a closer who's struggling and because, you can't use your closer every day. But I think the value of setup men in fantasy in general had already been growing.
Yeah, I think you're going to look for more of the clear-cut situations. Let's say you're doing a draft right now. I saw Edwin Diaz with the Mets still go really high among closers this spring, and I was tempted to do the same because you look at the upside, it is off the charts here. But, if he blows a couple early chances for the Mets in a season where it's only 60 games, I don't know if it's, I don't know if he's going to get another chance. Like the season might be too short for that to happen. So there's a big investment you might make as your number one closer, and he's already off the board. So I think you're going to want some more stable options. I think someone who might be part of a committee like a Nick Anderson with the Rays, who we love, the strikeout rate is insane, but, the Rays can get creative with their closer role. So maybe you don't want to count on him as your number one closer. I think the other thing to think about is closers who maybe have been injury concern in the past. Aroldis Chapman, the Yankees haven't really always pushed him very hard. He's had some injury issues. Sean Doolittle, I think it goes for, a good example with that too. Ken Giles was hurt at one point last year. But, if you only need to get through 60 games, I think maybe you'd value those guys a bit more.
Some leagues I've been in here, Drew, have complained about the flukiness of saves. And there have even been talk of getting rid of the category altogether. I guess if you're going to experience that in a league or experiment with that in a league, this would be the year to do that, to try to figure out a different way, because it has gotten very random and it will be even more random in a 60-game season.
Yeah, absolutely. And as someone who updates our bullpen depth charts, it's a chore to have to keep up with, who's the eighth inning setup man, because the rules have changed. And that's what smart baseball teams do. They adapt, they get smarter. And it makes sense to use, your fireman to put out a fire in the seventh inning. Josh Hader is still the number one option in fantasy. Actually, I do like him a little bit more now because he's shown that he can throw multiple innings at a time. And the Brewers don't have to worry so much about overusing him in terms of total workload. Like, what's he going to top out at? Like 25 to 30 innings. On a day-to-day basis, overuse could definitely be a concern, but I think teams can manage that.
I mean, with only 60 games, I think we could see some more like bullpenning. I don't think it was ever really sustainable as a model over a full 162-game season, but 60 games with expanded rosters, some model of that could work. And like we've been saying, starting pitchers may not have their full workload right away. So I think it's going to be really interesting. You might want to target some like long relievers to vulture some wins. You could utilize your bullpen spots that way. And because there are going to be some quick hooks with closers, I think you want to get some late inning relievers with high strikeout ability, because those are typically the ones who end up closing games anyways if there's a job change.
Yeah, Ryan Presley of the Astros, Dellin Betances of the Mets. He's apparently in great shape right now. Drew Pomeranz of the Padres. He can be a multi-inning guy. Will Harris, Nationals. Trevor May of the Twins. James Karinchak of the Indians too. We like him a lot. A young relief prospect. I think one interesting thing, sort of in general, that is a factor in the fantasy closer scene is that the trade deadline will be August 31st this year instead of July 31st, and that's smack dab in the middle of a 60-game season. 5 weeks into the season with less than 4 weeks to go. So, rebuilding teams or teams that have closers on expiring contracts seem less likely to part with those guys than they would in a 162 game schedule with a July 31st trade deadline. It's like a cost benefit analysis. Kirby Yates comes to mind with the Padres. I feel way more confident that he'll be with the Padres throughout the year. He's an impending free agent. And to me, he's the number 2 closer on the board in my rankings right after Josh Hader.
We hear all the time, don't fall for small sample sizes. That's all we got in 2020. The whole season is going to be a small sample size. So that is the talk on closers. DJ Short, Drew Silva. Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.